Hey everybody, Teldo here, and let me share my first impressions for the sandbox MMO Black Desert Online. Personally, I had some trouble getting into the game at first back when I played during CBT1, because it was very overwhelming, the combat system felt weird, there were too many players fighting for the first few quest mobs, and the monsters' health bar didn't seem to deplete when I was hitting them. They just fell over at some point, and it felt really weird and clunky to me. Later on, I figured out how the combat mechanics actually worked, and I started liking it. I also learned how the thing with the HP bar was part of an interesting feature called Knowledge System. I became intrigued by all of this, and I started discovering how the game did a lot of things differently than most MMOs I played in the past, and I fell in love with the feeling of wonder and mystery I had when digging more and more into it. To be clear, this sense of wonder is something that makes the game super interesting to me because everything is still new and there's lots to discover, but I don't know if the game will have the sustainability to make it fun in the long run, but I will talk more about this later. But let me explain a few of the features that really tickled my sense of curiosity. The Knowledge System. This is almost like an achievement system, but it's deeply embedded into everything you do in the game. You can gain knowledge about almost everything, including monsters, NPCs, professions, items you can gather, places in the world you can visit, and even learn about history, theology, etc. Learning about those things will make you better at interacting with them. So for example, when encountering new types of enemies, you'll have a tougher time fighting them at first. You won't see their HP bar deplete, for example. But after killing them a few times, you gain benefits like more XP and better loot, and of course you will also see their health go down as well. The game even has little pop-ups at the top about the latest knowledge you obtained and offers some information about them. I'm typically not the person to be deeply interested in lore, but I feel like this combined with some of the other sandbox elements can give you a really immersive feeling of the game. Amity System. The game allows you to build up favor with basically any NPC. This in return will give you benefits depending on which NPC you're becoming friends with. As an example, you can earn more knowledge about other topics like the basics of hunting, or you can unlock better items from their shops to purchase, like equipment for your horse. Gaining Amity is achieved by using existing knowledge about topics that the NPC you're interacting with is interested in. You then play a minigame to build a chain of topics which have specific chance to spark interest from the NPC. If you do well, the NPC will start liking you more and you'll start gaining benefits. Strategy elements. Now, this is where stuff got really interesting to me. Right now, we're looking at the first bigger city through the world map. You can see there's a storage window which allows you to put away some of your items and/or money in that city safely. There's also a number of rooms in each city that you can rent and build different establishments in. For example, you can have your own residence in this city, which you can decorate with your furniture. But you can also rent rooms for your NPC workers who can fulfill tasks for you. You can get rooms like a refinery, a handcraft, tools, or furniture workshop, which then can be used by your workers to craft specific items. On top of that, there are nodes spread all over the world, which you can gain influence over. They offer different resources like wood, ores, or you can build something like a potato farm. In the Logia farm here, we can farm potatoes and then use our rented crop workbench in one of the rooms to let our workers farm and then put potatoes in crates, which then can be used in trade runs later on. In order to get the most out of trade runs, you should travel far to gain a distance bonus for the goods you're selling. But for that to work, you also need to connect your destination with the origin of the product you're trading. This is achieved by building a chain of nodes from one place to another. On top of that, the demand of the product you're selling differs depending on where you're going and how much it's being traded there. There's a bunch more, like you can send resources from one city's storage to another, and guilds can occupy specific nodes and ask for taxes, etc., but I don't want to go too deep here. Immersion. Another thing that I find really interesting in Black Desert Online is that you can play it the way you want. You can basically do anything and you'll get rewarded in one way or another. You can run around and talk to different NPCs, reading through what they have to say, gaining knowledge, or you can just explore some cave you found somewhere and you might find a book or an old stone slab in there, which will again reward you with knowledge. You can spend hours in the first area just doing non-combat quests, learning how to craft and gather materials. Or you can even build your own little plantation, which is science in itself. The game has great animations, beautiful graphics, different weather effects, and sometimes it gets really dark too, which allows you to have a really immersive experience if you open up to it. I can see this game being a fun, casual level experience, just for absorbing the world and the lore. Maybe you can even fill in some roleplay with friends if you like that. An important aspect of the game are the resources energy and contribution points. Energy is basically used for anything, getting to know NPCs, playing the Amity game, discovering relics like stone slabs in the world, crafting, gathering, etc. It replenishes itself automatically by just being online, getting 1 point every 3 minutes. If you're offline, you'll gain points too, but at a slower rate. You can build up your maximum amount of energy by doing all kinds of stuff in the world, which again allows you to just do what you want and still get some kind of reward. Contribution points are used to gain influence over nodes or rent rooms in cities. It can also be used to rent specific items from NPCs in the city, like you can rent a flute or an adventurer seal, which gives you a new quest every day. These points are very limited in the start, and you gain contribution points XP by helping NPCs when you fulfill their quests. Again, there are tons and tons of different quests you can do, ranging from story and combat to crafting and exploration quests. Combat. Now, this is one of the more important things to me as a mechanically focused player. The combat system, as I mentioned earlier, was confusing at first and felt a little off. That's primarily because I wanted to use different abilities through the action bar like I'm used to from traditional MMOs. However, the game allows and also rewards you for using a different way of input, making your skills cost less mana. The input of abilities can almost be compared to something like a fighting game where you press a combination of buttons to do specific moves. Once I grasped that concept and started remembering how to do most of the abilities this way, combat turned out to be a lot more fun than initially perceived. Here, I press LMB for my basic attack. Using back and LMB allows me to cast a more powerful melee attack, dealing more damage and costing more mana. I also learned an ability which allows me to use a strong finisher by pressing RMB while doing my back LMB attack. Pressing Shift plus LMB lets me charge forward as a gap closer. LMB plus RMB charges a powerful ranged attack which then can be thrown at enemies. Dodging backwards and then using LMB plus RMB makes this instant. Shift plus E charges up a slow ranged attack for a lot of mana, dealing tons of damage. There are other abilities too, but I don't want to go too much into detail. Generally, the gameplay is fast and fun, and has a satisfying feel to it. It makes a grind feel like it's not really a grind to me, at least for now. Endgame. Now, this is where things get tricky for me. I'm a PvP player at heart. The game doesn't offer any PvP in early levels, and while the combat mechanics are really fun, I'm really not sure how it would play in a PvP scenario. It feels a lot more like most of the abilities are designed around PvE, and I'm afraid it might feel spammy in PvP. I can basically dash around non-stop, and I'm really not sure how that'll affect PvP in the end. And this is where I worry. The quality of PvP, especially as a solo player, is going to be the deal breaker for me when it comes to this game, and I will keep you guys up to date in a future video on how the PvP actually feels. On top of that, the game focuses a lot on farming mobs endgame. While I enjoy the grind right now when leveling due to the fun combat mechanics, I really don't know if I'd enjoy this in the long run during the endgame as well. I'm hoping that similar to Arcade, it's possible to actively PK people and maybe steal stuff from them during raid runs and gain a lot of rewards that way. But from what I've heard, the game punishes you quite heavily with bad karma for PKs, which can result in NPCs becoming hostile towards you. Most of the actual PvP will happen through guild versus guild. You can declare war against other guilds and then openly attack their members without punishment, as far as I understand. I'm scared that this system might result in promoting only large-scale fights rather than smaller skirmishes that I enjoy so much. Conclusion. Black Desert does a lot of things differently, and once you get over the initial barrier, it could be an interesting experience for you. The endgame of sandbox MMOs works differently than theme park MMOs. It doesn't rely on pushing out new instance dungeons constantly to keep players interested. Instead, it offers a rule set for players to generate their content themselves. Technically, the player base is the content. Their interaction with each other, the player-driven economy, drama between and within guilds, big wars, and aspects like those are what makes sandbox MMOs interesting, I think. If BDO ends up being able to deliver the right environment there, I can see the game building a dedicated following in the long run. But getting the details just right to make the sandbox experience fun is hard, and I cannot judge yet if Black Desert does it well or not. For me, the game has been fun just as a casual adventure, getting briefly lost in its world and seeing intriguing approaches and features I haven't really witnessed like that before in other games. I'll continue playing to see if the PvP feels good enough to keep me interested, and I'll keep you guys up to date. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful to you, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
That is where you're wrong. Be gone. Don't try to stop